I have no rest. Well, hey there, and welcome to the After Chat. I'm your host, Stuart Brent. I'm here with my co-host, Ellis Hobson, and our guests today are Lindsay Stokes, Tanner Iglio, and Madison Lloyd. We're just so glad that you all are here today, and we're especially grateful that you're joining us from wherever you're watching or listening from today, because we're going to be talking about something that I know has affected just about every single person I know. It's affected me ever since I was a small child, maybe even a baby before I even had a memory, because my mom has shared before that I wasn't a very content baby. Probably more than I care for her to share, but she has. But before we start talking about contentment, I just want to know, was there something when you were a child that you had to have, that your life wouldn't be complete unless you had this thing? And how'd that work out for you?
I'd say for me, I had to have my shoes just right and my hair on point. Had to have the shoes pulled super tight, the laces exactly where I needed them. My hair had to be slicked back on the sides with a nice big poof and the bow to go.
Big hair, huh?
If I felt like I was looking good, I was content.
You were content.
Not all the hair, Stuart. Just the
front.
poof.
Just the front.
Slick,
I got
but
you.
yeah.
I got you.
Yeah. It was pretty easy for me to be discontent, I would say. Like, any jacket that had any sort of like scrunchy sleeves or something, didn't want them touching my wrists, zippers, buttons, long pant legs, couldn't do it.
But you've overcome.
Yeah, not only have I overcome, I'm wearing something with a zipper, but also scrunches.
And we're grateful, too.
You know what they call this,
are.
Stuart? They call this immersion therapy.
Immersion therapy. Okay.
It works, people.
That's a topic for another episode for sure.
Next
right?
week.
Next week.
I feel like y'all went super specific. I guess I'm just not that deep. I just wanted an Xbox. Okay, like
That's fair.
I played my friends' Xboxes, like my cousin, whoever had one. I didn't get my own until college. So
it never worked out for you. You just wanted your whole childhood.
I guess,
college.
yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's kind of how it went. So
Ellis was discontent until college.
yeah,
With the Xbox, when it comes to that.
it only hurts when I think about it.
That's right. Only when somebody brings it up. Right. That's awesome.
I really wanted for a long time an easy bake oven. I had to earn it with good behavior, and it took a long time.
It took a long
A long time.
You were just a bad child, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, at what age did you get the Easy Bake Oven? I mean, did you just get it?
I think I was like 7.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had to like go through a year straight of like doing all my chores. My parents were real serious about like earning
No doubt.
your reward. Yeah.
Well, at least you got it, right?
Yeah.
You got the Easy Bake
Yeah.
Oven.
like days without incident. Did you have a board on the
I
wall?
literally
or something?
did. Sticker dry. It was like a dry erase board. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm glad you got your Easy Bake Oven. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
you are too. Well, hey, in one of Pastor Brian's recent messages, he shared with us what being discontent looks like for the Christ follower. So I just want to take a couple minutes, watch this clip from his message, and we're going to come back here and talk about that.
Paul, the Apostle Paul, the great church planter and the follower of Jesus, he one time actually had it all. And from a human perspective, the guy had an amazing resume and a super impressive balance sheet. He was educated in the highest institutions. He had degrees to prove his pedigree. He had achieved prestige and power in his career. He was wealthy by anybody's calculation. Paul chased after life the way that many of us do. But while his achievements and his possessions and his wealth piled up, the void inside of him also grew. One day he met Jesus, and it changed everything for him. And he realized that he was chasing after the wrong things, not because they were bad in and of themselves, but because of the lie that they would bring him the one thing he sought: contentment, peace in his soul.
Well, hey, can you all relate to what he just shared?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What does that contentment look like for you all? Or that discontentment that he talked about?
I know particularly like when I got into high school and into college, and now that was a long time ago, believe it or not, with this baby face shows. But
Right.
I spent a lot of time really worrying about trying to, gain, I guess, recognition, popularity, whatever word you want to use, approval of my peers and things like that. And it not only was always shallow for me in terms of that pursuit, but it really started to it became something even worse for me because it started to pollute the way that I treated people and the way I viewed my friends. And I started to look at new relationships with people as in like, how much of this thing that I'm chasing is this going to bring me? Like, how much recognition am I going to get because I know this person? Or, on the other end, like, I don't really know if I want to be around this person because, they're not going to raise my cool factor, whatever you want to call it. And it really started to poison a lot of my relationships. So it was even worse than just for myself, because I started hurting others as well.
Oh, wow. So were you able to like overcome that? I mean, what changed in you to overcome that?
Yeah, I learned a pretty hard lesson that if you really ask God, to break your heart, as we've talked about in the past, or just any of those things, if you ask him to humble you, however you want to put it, ask him to bring you where he needs you to be, and then he does it, it can be a pretty less than pleasant process. But where I exist now is so much more whole and full, and with so many great relationships in my life that that he's put in front of me now that I feel like I can actually, and I feel like he actually feels like I can maintain them well in the way that those people deserve. So.
Well, I definitely didn't know you back then, like you're talking about. I've just known you for a few years, Tanner, and I would have never thought that about you because the way that you treat people now and the way that I see you interact with folks is just amazing. It really is. So.
I think when I think about like the period of my life where I was most discontent, so I didn't grow up in church, as I've mentioned a few times, but I went to school to be a sports writer, and I wrote articles for high school sports for a couple of years, and then it didn't pan out the way I hoped. Is the short version, and I remember being very discontent when that kind of all broke apart because that's what I wanted so badly, and I had invested so much time and energy into, and not only when coming to the realization it didn't work out, but for a period of time after where I was like searching for something else, but also like, man, I can't believe this didn't work out after all this time and energy. So, and in a lot of ways with where my life is now, what I'm doing, I have a lot less material things than I did back then, but I'm much more content with what I have now and at peace with what I have now than I did back then. So,
So your discontentment stemmed out of, like a lot of people, that ambition of doing something else.
For sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think for me, I chased success for a long time. Got the degrees, had an awesome job, climbed the ladder, hit the ceiling, and then it didn't feel like enough anymore. And that was the period of time when I was starting to have kids and realized that they were the center of it. And what I thought was bringing me joy and contentment and, climb the ladder really wasn't anymore. And I became more discontent and I felt more friction in my life than I've ever felt before.
You mind sharing that ladder that you were climbing? Because, we haven't known each other very long. I'd like to know, what ladder were you climbing? What were you chasing?
Well,
after
I
that?
went to school for 26 years straight.
26 years.
Believe it or not.
Lost me already.
It was quite the journey, but I went through school. I got my bachelor's, my master's, my doctorate, climbed through research, was teaching at a higher education institution, became a tenured professor. I did it. I jumped through all the hoops. I checked the boxes, and then I felt empty and friction and off balance. And you look at it on paper, with awesome job, and people would say, well, why? You've done it. And I wasn't content. And that's when I started to pray the bold prayers of, all right, what are you trying to teach me? What am I supposed to get out of this? How do I get balance in my life? Teach me, show me. I'm ready. And it brought more discontentment. And it just revealed all the brokenness that was there that needed to be fixed in order for me to feel a balance and feel whole and calm and feel that sense of joy.
So you had 2 bouts of discontentment, then one to pursue all that success, and then one after you started praying to change, right? Wow.
Change. Yeah, change and to grieve that I worked so hard for all of this and that wasn't what I maybe needed or wanted anymore.
Yeah.
After you spent all those years going after it.
How did the people in your life react to the decision to kind of make such a change, and did it help you or hurt you deal with the discontent that came out of that?
So my husband knew, because he was the one I confided in the whole time, of just the angst I was feeling about all of it. But everyone on the outside was shocked. And when I revealed that it was time for me to step away, and I didn't know what was next, but I was okay with not knowing what was next, because all that discontentment and just praying for balance and peace, I finally had an unexplained peace that it was okay to walk away. And it threw everybody for a loop. Absolutely for a loop.
Wow. Can y'all relate to that? To what she was talking about, that?
I feel like I went into facing my discontentment kind of kicking and screaming. The thing that I kind of picture as a similar situation, but still completely different. I was in a relationship that I was really wanting to make work, and I was living off of his opinion of me as like my source of who I thought I was. And so I felt like I was kind of like a bottomless pit for attention from this one specific person. And I remember like realizing that things were just kind of in a downward, like super downward spiral. And I remember praying like, God, if he's not the right one for me, just take him away. And boy, like it went quick. And I was not prepared to deal with the ramifications of being able to pray that and face the consequences. And it's the path that kind of led me to really reconnect with who I am, who I wanted to be. And eventually it was the catalyst that kind of brought me to being here at PCC and starting a career in ministry.
Right. And so has that career in ministry, has that really helped you stay centered in your discontent or your contentment? You know, do you find another sense of contentment there?
I think it's a constant reason to check in with, am I content in the right things? Am I content because I am doing my job as best as I can, or am I content because I know that I am doing what God has called me to do? So it's not the solution, but it's a great reason to stay in touch with myself.
Right. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So I know that, Ellis, you said not long ago on one of the episodes about comfort and how comfort, you know, can compel us to inaction. Well, I feel that way sometimes about contentment too, kind of like what you're saying, keeping that in check, because man, when we feel content, I know for me personally, I can feel like, well, I don't have to do anything. I'm just going to sit right here in this contentment for a while, you know. So,
Stuart, you felt some discontent that eventually led us to be sitting here.
To be sitting right here. Yep, absolutely. And that's, you know, this is pretty dear to me too. The last podcast, we talked about that. And that's why I was really seeking God to hear his voice, to expand influence. And it all was spurred out of a discontentment that I had inside of me to do something else, to reach more people for him. It's like, God, what do you want me to do? And it was this, it's the first time I ever heard the phrase holy discontentment, holy discontentment that I had to really pursue him. And out of that discontentment, we're here now. And I still, I think you know me well enough to know that I don't ever really feel content. It's like, we got to keep pushing, you know, we got to keep pushing. But I really feel that, like you, it keeps it in check. It keeps it in check. What is my motive for that discontentment and pushing forward? So, But how about you? I mean, did you feel that discontentment? I know that we had a conversation about that same time where you were looking to expand. We didn't even know that. We were in two separate conversations. And
yeah, you know, that's true. I felt like God was telling me to clear some time in my schedule and create some bandwidth, but it was something that unfolded over the period of many months, and I didn't know why, and that was really frustrating at the time. And I was like, what am I doing this for? I could be using this to do something else. Little did I know that this would come along and we'd be sitting here doing like this, along with some other things that have fallen into place in my life. So it was the period of discontentment really has turned into something amazing and something I am really at peace with and excited about. So it's pretty cool.
It really is. It really is. So, Lindsay, I was just curious. I know that as you made that shift from, chasing the career and all that had into your, more, sounds like a more peaceful life. Now, do you find yourself discontent about anything as far as, serving God or, following his call there?
No, I feel like I have more bandwidth or time or space within myself to explore opportunities, to be here tonight, to volunteer more at our local campus at Farmville, whoop, whoop. To make myself more available, because that was one of the things that I was missing out on, and I felt that, and it hurt. And who knew that all the grief and the stepping away from that career would allow me to be more fulfilled and more content with exploring more opportunities where I can be more involved and live out the Christian life that I've wanted for so long, that I've desired, but felt like was being squeezed for reasons I didn't know.
Tanner, I know you have a story of feeling some discontentment professionally and kind of where it led you. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, I know. I've felt like I was called into ministry back when I was still in high school, but it took about a decade for it to really fall in fully in place because, life happens and we make our own decisions and we live with those consequences, and God can still make beautiful things out of them. But so that's definitely a long story, but the closest up to where I am now, I also was working like a high-powered corporate job with lots of room for upward movement and, a very nice financial future and all those things. But I remember there was one specific day where we were just working these insane hours, and what was interesting about it is when it goes onto the whole contentment thing is I told the people that hired me in my interview, I said, I just want to let you know, I know this, the kind of demand that comes along with this job, but I just want to let you know, quote, this may be dumb to say in an interview, but if it comes between my job and my marriage and my faith, I'm always going to pick my marriage and my faith over my job. I ended up getting the job anyway, but then fast forward about a year and I find myself working these crazy hours and I'm looking across at my wife because this was right during when COVID was happening. So, work and home, they all blended. And so it felt like nothing else existed. I was just working and I was sitting across from my wife and I was like, hey, I was on my computer. It was like 8 p.m. and I was like, have I asked you how your day was yet? And she was like, no, that's okay. I know you're busy. And she's very gracious. My wife is incredible. But I was like, in here, I was like, that's not okay. And that's not what I said I was going to stand for. And then, Elijah, one of our pastors here, he's one of my very close friends. And he called me one day, literally just out of the blue to be like, hey man, how are you? Haven't heard from you in a while. Sitting on my computer and I was on like 17 hours straight of working at this particular instance. And I literally just started sobbing. I'm like, I'm just like a grown man sitting here at my job. I'm just crying. I'm crying. And it was just because who I was and the core of who God had made me to be was broken. And it's not because there weren't good things about my job, or it's not because God wasn't moving in my life. It was because I had started to place my own ambitions and what I was trying to state as success above it. And I really started to ask God to lead me where he was going to. And, if you get to know me well enough, you know enough of my stories, I always tell people I've heard God speak to me twice in my life ever. Like, and I guess how people would normally picture God in the movies, like, this is what I need for you to do. And he called me into ministry right around that time. And it just started, the discontent that you were talking about, the holy discontentment right there. It started filling me because I felt like nothing I was doing, even if I was succeeding at the utmost level at this thing, it was never going to fill even a little success in where God was actually calling me. And so, then it comes around where it's like, hey, you want to come work in ministry and this is what the pay discrepancy would be. This is what your life will look like. And, Molly, my wife, she was 100% on board. And it was just like, this is what I need to do. And what's crazy about that is as I find contentment in where God has led me, all of these other things, not only do they matter less and create less discontentment than you think they would, but as you follow God deeper and deeper, he opens up new avenues that you never thought of that would make you content in ways that round you out and make you even more whole than you thought you could be based on these other successes.
Wow. That's
So-
incredible. That's incredible. And, it's funny because, I've had another career besides ministry, going on 25 years now. And, I applauded you when you made that decision to step away from that and to go, head first into ministry like that. And I know God is just blessing you and having that contentment inside of you now. I didn't do that. I haven't stepped away, and I'm not saying that I love my job that much. There's probably some discontentment there, but it's
They're watching.
They're watching.
They're listening.
but you're right. But it really is amazing though how God can use us in different stages of life and give us that contentment or that holy discontentment to move us around for His purposes, what He's called us to do. Well, hey, for those of you watching or listening, wherever you are right now, it is our hope that if you are feeling discontent, that maybe God has a plan for your restlessness. Maybe He wants to do something amazing with that through you, because I think we all know sitting here right now that peace and that contentment that we're searching for can be found by living the life that God wants for us. And that is our hope for you. I want to encourage you that if you want to check out Brian's full message, you can do that by clicking the link in our description or just searching Passion Community Church at YouTube. I hope that you'll do that. I hope you'll come back next week. We're going to be talking about something that has affected my family. It may affect you and someone that you love as well. It is that prevalent. So come back for a real talk next week. We'll see you there at the After Chat.
Thanks for joining us for The After Chat. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. To be the first to hear our next episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button and get notifications for new content. You can also follow us on social media on Instagram at PCC Wired and Facebook at Passion Community Church. For additional resources and links, check out the description. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on The After Chat.